Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I am, again, Nora McKenzie, a member of the Brass Reference and Academic Libraries Committee for Brass and the co-chair of the Symposia Subcommittee alongside Christy Cunningham as my fellow co-chair. Special thanks to our faithful and hardworking subcommittee of Angel Truesdale, Brian Garrison Lynn, and Doris Chui. All sessions today will have been recorded and will be sent out to those who have registered. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and mute your audio and video as we get started. So thank you again for spending this day with us this afternoon with Brass and all of our presenters. I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Doris to kick us off for our last session, which is mini case studies, engaging professional development for academic business librarians.
Thank you so much, Nora. So we have an excellent panel today. So let me start off with the list. It's an impressive list. From Georgetown University, we have Jennifer Boucher. From McDaniel College, we have David Brennan. From American University, we have Katie Hutt. From Virginia Tech, we have Ellen Krupar, excuse me. From Shenandoah University, we have Andy Culp. From James Madison University, we have Valerie Linson Biglar. And from the University of Richmond, we have Carrie Ludovico. And lastly, we have from James Madison University, we have Elizabeth Price. So I'll ask the panel to take over. Thank you.
Right. I am Elizabeth Price, and I am here on behalf of the Capital Area Business Academic Librarians, which I am chairing this year. And we appreciate Brass for selecting us to take part in Winter Symposium this year. And we're here to facilitate a session about our group's success using case studies as a professional development tool. So Cabal is a professional organization for business librarians working at academic institutions in Delaware, the District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia. We do use the acronym Cabal because we think it makes us sound a little formidable and mysterious. So we try to go with that whenever we can. Doris has already introduced my co-presenters today. And when we move into our breakout rooms, one of them will be in your room to facilitate our discussion. So as fellow business librarians, you're probably familiar with the case method since it's used regularly in business school curriculum. For any newcomers with us today, this learning tool involves studying actual business situations to improve a manager's or a student's ability to solve problems according to the Encyclopedia of Management. Cases are typically fictionalized accounts of a real-life organization that relies on discussion to elicit diverse ideas, experiences, and views. And we have stripped them down into very small bites in order to make them work the way we needed them to work. Cabal decided to try the case methods after years of virtual meetings. Our goal was to facilitate more discussion between our members and knowledge sharing so that we could have less of a sage on the stage type of presentation during our sessions and more discussion among our members. So 2 members agreed to write up fictionalized accounts of the decision they had wrestled with in their collections work. We are so grateful to Natalie Burklaff and Ellen Krupar for being those brave volunteers. And their cases, the original ones that started us down this path, are available on Cabal's website. In our inaugural discussion, we were surprised to learn how many factors influenced our approach to collections work, such as whether we were in staff or faculty lines, whether our school was publicly or privately funded, and where we were in our career trajectories. So based on positive feedback from our members, we wrote and discussed several cases throughout that academic year. I'm going to turn it over to Katie.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Katie Hutt. I'm the Business and Econ Librarian at American University. And so for today's discussion, we've chosen 2 cases about instruction. And you're going to have time to read through those cases when we get into our breakout rooms. So the first one is titled Opportunity or Exploitation, Navigating a Last-Minute Request for Instruction. This was written by Ellen Krupar, and it examines an instruction scenario that I'm sure many of us has faced, an invitation from a professor who will be traveling or otherwise absent to teach an information literacy class so that they don't have to cancel their class outright. And agreeing to teach this session, of course, has both pros and cons. The second case is titled You Can Build It, but Will They Come? And this was written by Valerie Linsenbigler and Elizabeth Price. And this case, we think, will really resonate with any of us who have ever had a disappointing experience offering extracurricular workshops or instruction. And now I'm going to review how the discussion is going to unfold. So the case, one of these two that your group is going to discuss, is going to depend on your breakout room number. And there will be a Cabal member assigned to each of the 8 breakout rooms who will serve as the facilitator. You're going to be in your breakout rooms for about 25-ish minutes, and then we'll come back together. And just to make sure that you know, again, what will happen, the link that I believe Doris has either just put in the chat or will put in the chat opens a document that's going to explain what will happen in the breakout rooms. And so as soon as the link is there, we encourage you to click on it so you know, again, what's going to happen. And that's also how you'll access the cases that we're going to be discussing. Before we move into these breakout rooms, before Angel moves us in, are there any questions before we start that? Okay, so if not, I think we can start moving into those breakout rooms. I know with a big group that takes a while, so we will all be patient. And again, we should be in there for about 25 minutes.
Angel, can you put me in breakout room number 5?
Thank you. So we hope that you enjoyed your discussions. And if you didn't get through all of the questions, No worries, that happens. We typically try to have everyone read through them before discussion, and we weren't able to do that today. So, we probably, some of the groups took a little bit of extra time so that everyone could read through the case study. But now we want to know what you learned from this exercise. We're going to use the chat to do that. The first question is, what is something that you hadn't considered about the case before a colleague mentioned it? And again, you can just start typing into the chat. So as people are typing, I'll share something that I learned about the timing of requests that I hadn't considered before. So one of the people in my breakout room was saying that they're on a quarter schedule. They're not on traditional semester schedule. And so they don't have the ability to say, well, I need a 2 weeks notice because their quarters are 10 weeks. And so it's so much shorter than, those of us who are on the traditional semester schedule have to say no to a request. I'll give it a minute or two for people to finish typing if you're typing anything. I'm seeing in the chat empowering to say no. We have to let faculty know that our time is just as valuable as theirs, 100%. It can be helpful to create an official policy. Yes, saying no is okay. All right. And as people are typing, I see another one, how completely online instructional materials and our objects may have similar restrictions and obligations to in-person. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes more. Sometimes I find it takes me longer to create something for an asynchronous class than in person. Actually, usually I find that it takes me longer. All right, so please keep these coming. I'm gonna ask the second question, so you can feel free to respond to the first one or the second one. How might you apply what you learned when faced with a work dilemma in the future? Anything that you can put to work? Again, I can go ahead and share as you all are just thinking about this and writing your answers. One thing that someone in my group was talking about was just like ways to engage students if you don't have a specific assignment that you're teaching to. And obviously that is vastly preferred. But if you end up in a situation where you don't have an assignment that you can teach to, just thinking of ideas to engage students without that assignment prompt.
On Gail's point, that was one of the things that I said is, librarians should just have adaptable and flexible in all of our job titles because we are so used to like rolling with, oh, only one person showed up. Let's tailor this to you and make sure it's relevant.
That's a good one, Jennifer. I didn't think about that one. That's kind of like, you got a gimme, a free period. You can do what you want with it. That's kind of interesting thought. I like that.
I know one thing that surprised me in the initial discussion that Cabal had about this when Ellen wrote the case And Ellen will tell you how many years she has till retirement pretty openly. She might have told her group that today, in fact. And I remember thinking, oh, Ellen will say no to this request for sure. And then she surprised me by saying, oh, no, I said yes. And it just really kind of blew my mind in the moment that she saw value in doing that when my response would have been, no way am I going to do this for this faculty member. So that was part of the reason why we have found these so fun to discuss, is learning from each other about how it's good to change your mind about your approach based on what others are doing.
Yeah, and I love that suggestion, sorry. But I love Jennifer's suggestion that you can easily change these so that they're not business dependent, right? If you want to get a discussion going in department meetings. Because I think hopefully what this is showing us is that we've all been through similar situations. And we can all learn something from each other.
Well, I was going to say the chat is slowing down. And echoing Katie, as we've talked about potentially trying to use these some in our discussion in my library. But let's move on to our next slide. So if you want to write some cases yourself, we have learned a few things about what makes good ones. One of them, make them brief, usually less than 1 page, and always share cases ahead of meetings. I'm sorry, we did not remember to do that today. Try to base those topics on lived experiences, but keep some of those details general so that you can have more people can relate. For instance, we noticed when we wrote a case about a tenure track faculty member, that was less relevant to people who weren't on tenure track. Fortunately, the scenario was a little bit more general about basically how do you disagree with your manager. So we were still able to have people share who weren't on the tenure track. Avoid scenarios with very clear solutions. I'm going to oversimplify what I mean by a clear solution, which is if you wrote a case about should a faculty member write 3 peer-reviewed articles if their tenure requirements say they have to, there's probably a pretty clear solution if they need to do that, unless they don't want to get tenure. So in that case, it probably wouldn't have as much discussion. Now, if you want to discuss, should that be the criteria and how could we change our criteria or expectations, that might make a better case. Try to write questions that take advantage of the varied experience levels of your audience, including those who are newer to the field. That's one of the things we were really trying to do, was make sure that some of our newer business librarians were feeling like they could contribute by sharing what they've experienced or been told and get feedback on those situations. And as we mentioned, we usually try to keep discussions smaller. It worked out really well today. Having just a couple of people and allowing everybody to share, we try to keep them between 4 and 6 people, including the facilitator, when we do this in cabal meetings. So at this point, before we wrap up, we wanted to know if anybody had questions for us. And I think we can handle any of them.
I'll ask a question of those of you who wrote the cases, because I was not involved in that part of this. How much time did it take and how hard was it to do that writing?
I think Valerie, for ours, we had a discussion and then I wrote it up like in a day. And then I've been editing most of them just because I like them. And so they really don't take that much time. I've been querying my friends for like, what's your worst case scenario, or what's a scenario you've dealt with in, that I could write about. So if you have one, send it my way. I'm always willing to write it and eventually post it. The slides was a template in Google, and I think they just mentioned that they've updated some templates, and I found it. It's actually called like Book Club. And I definitely recommend that you look for it, or you can copy mine, of course. I know the slides will be shared after the session. But in general, we definitely think that these are very generalizable if you change some of the details. All right. Last, here's our contact information. We really hope you enjoyed taking part in the session. Many thanks to Brass for hosting this event, which I know is a tremendous amount of work. So thank you to the organizers for putting all of this together. And especially to Angel for making our very complicated breakout rooms work. Thank you so much. If anyone attending today actually works in the capital area and you aren't a member of Cabal, please consider joining us. We would love to have you. And our last request to you is, if you do use one of our cases, which we highly encourage you to use in whatever scenarios you've discussed, mentoring meetings, department meetings, any of those kind of things, we would love to, if you would let us know via the email address, so that we can help our authors communicate the impact of their cases. And if, like I said, if you have another idea, send it our way, because we're happy to post some more cases. Thank you so much for attending, and I guess we'll see anybody who's going to be here in the spring in April.
Elizabeth, what are the criteria for joining Cabal?
Oh, you have to work at an academic institution, and you have to be located in one of those 4 states I mentioned earlier, Delaware, DC, Maryland, or Virginia, or
work for an institution that
or
you
work
can
for an
live here.
institution
Yeah.
in one of those states.
And I think we also open it to students, right? Don't we have this weird other membership level?
We do.
So
Thanks,
if you're a
Jennifer.
student anywhere and you're interested in business librarianship, we welcome you to come in, not as a voting member, but as a networking member.
Jennifer is part of the one of the founding members, so I appreciate her for reminding me about things that I should have mentioned.
Okay, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this session. It was very enlightening. So I want to thank all our speakers from this last mini cases session. So Nora, would you like to close out the symposium today?
Yes, I would. Thanks so much. So thank you all for coming to the symposium today. Thank you for staying for our sessions. I think there was a great slate, and I hope you learned a lot. If you could, I'm going to put a feedback form into the chat. It will also go out with the recordings and the slides from all of the different sessions today. But we would love to get your feedback, see what we can do to make it even better for the next time, and what you liked this time. So thank you again to all of our presenters. You all did a mighty work bringing this together alongside the whole subcommittee. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great rest of your year. We hope it wraps out smoothly. Bye-bye.